this time, not so much. Actually, I was quite shocked when I had over a dozen that offered to come up and share about their time serving. So Savannah's going to get us started. I'd ask that you hold your applause until all of them are done, and then we'll thank all of them for sharing when Remington finishes up.
Well, this is mission trip number 5, and it truly seems a little crazy. I was the only graduate of 2019 to travel to Nashville this year, and I was honestly terrified. As the oldest student on the trip, I was given a large leadership role, and again was terrified as I had never had a role as large as that. I struggled getting comfortable with our group because I was the oldest and was given a role I didn't know how to fulfill and truly didn't think I could. I prayed on our way down for God to give me the courage and the guidance to help the younger students, listening, praying, and giving advice when asked, and I became more comfortable. In the end, I was very thankful for the opportunity I had, the connections I made, the confidence I was gifted, and also a quick shout out to the missions team. Do not allow your relationship with God or each other to fizzle out due to your focus being drawn somewhere else. I love you all. Thank you for the opportunity, and God bless.
My name is Aaliyah. This last missions trip to Nashville was my 3rd missions trip that I've been on. And it was different because on the last missions trips that I've been on, I've been with a lot of people my age, but this year there were a lot of younger kids. And I thought it was just really eye-opening and really great to see the kids actually open up to God and have them like shine through them, I guess. I think that I don't know, I just thought it was really cool having this experience because I remember my first missions trip 3 years ago. It was actually in Nashville too, and that was the first time that I actually felt God and like wanted to keep pursuing him, I guess. And I thought that was really cool, seeing all the younger kids go and have the same experience.
Hello, my name is Jason Thiemann, and I'm 15. And as some of you may know, and as some of you may not, my father passed away last year, the day before Father's Day. And he got into a motorcycle accident that day. He got into some bad stuff with some bad people, and I want to show that all of you that you can all take the right path of following our God and not taking the path of the devil. After the missions trip, I followed 2 words that really helped me, and them 2 words are open up. After you open up and try to grow closer to God, God will help you in so many different ways that you can't even imagine. He will bring you down the right path, and he'll never leave you behind him. He'll always keep you in front of him and always. And you'll never have to worry about anything else once you're with God. If you ever need someone to talk to, you should know that you always have friends, family, and most importantly, God. I hope that after you heard this, you yourself will open up and let God take you down the right path. Trust me, it's definitely worth it. You can do great things in life. Trust in the Lord and lean on him always. Surrendering my life has changed my life forever. Please go down the right path and continue to follow Jesus. Thank you.
Okay, this is my first missions trip, and I think it got me closer with God. Like, meeting these kids, it's like they don't have a lot, like, so, like, they don't get to do a lot of stuff, like, with other people. So it's, like, really good, like, connecting to people, and, like, I got to meet a lot of people there, and I think God really got me closer on this trip.
Well, my name is Kenzie. A lot of you probably don't know me because this is not my home church, but my grandparents are Russ and Thea Trelane, and they're the ones who kind of introduced me to Frontline about 3 years ago, and I really love it. This was my first mission trip. I'm 16, and it was a lot more than I could have ever imagined. Going into it, I didn't know what to expect, and coming home, I'm completely changed. The biggest thing that changed in me was that I'm less worried about other people's perspective and their what they think about me, their perception of who I am, and I'm much more confident in who I am as a child of God, and that was something that I was really struggling with before the trip, and afterwards I just feel like a completely different person. I'm so much more bold in my faith. I had the opportunity with one of my friends to pray for someone down there, which was something I would never have been willing to do before. And I don't know, it just made me a lot more willing to be who I am and be a child of God and be open with it. So I just wanted to thank you guys, all of you. I know a lot of time was spent in prayer. A lot of time was given to help make this what it was. And you guys have no idea the impact that you made, not only on all of our lives now, but in the future. The experiences people have in their teen years really affect who they become and the decisions they make in the future. And you guys won't have any idea until eternity how many lives you touched through this, and I just wanted to thank you.
Hi, my name is Emma Johnson. I'm 14. So before this mission trip, I was different, and when I got back, I was different too, but in a new way, like a new me. I grew in my faith and learned a lot that I have applied to my life, and it's changed it. A lot of unexpected things happened for me on this trip. Things such as getting out of my comfort zone and being fine with who I am, creating new friendships with people I thought I would have never talked to the whole time on this trip, and learning to love myself for who I am. So those things were the things I thought would never happen, but they did, and it happened for a reason. The new friendships I have, I know that they'll always be there for me. Before I really didn't have that, but now I do. Those people are church people, and church people are my type of people because they'll always be there for me and help me grow my faith, and that's all that some of us need.
Hi, my name is Dawson. I'm 16. This is my first mission trip I went on. I was really nervous to go on it. I didn't know what to expect. But after we got there and on the bus ride there, I got a lot closer to everyone. I mean, on the van ride. And it was cool. I was in one of the kids' camps, and it was really cool to get to know the kids over the week and play with them, but it was really sad to have to leave them too. But it was cool to see them all grow closer to God and everything. And I really appreciated just everyone being just great on the missions trip. I was getting closer to everyone, and that's it. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey, and I'm 15 years old. This is my first missions trip I've been on, and it really changed the way I think of God. It like completely changed me. Just seeing everybody connect with everybody and just everybody praying for each other, everybody just having a good time. It's kind of amazing just seeing that. And I was with one of the kid groups, kid camps, and it makes me so happy that kids are having fun, but yet also enjoying listening to. We had a story time, and then we had like a little craft after it, and the kids really enjoyed the story, and they really enjoyed the crafts that go along with the story, and I just really enjoyed the trip. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Remington Steele, and last year I graduated from high school, thankfully, and I've just been working at Plastic Corporation over in Rush, and saving up some money, and I had this opportunity to be a part of this missions trip, so I took it, and I was there as a student, or not a student, well, like a leader, and I was working at, I was assigned to the kids camp that these two were at as well, and also Jacob, and I went on this trip and I didn't really know exactly why. Like, I just had the opportunity and went. And when I was there with those kids have, little kids have high expectations. They're like, come on, play with me, and I'm like super out of energy in this stage of life. I'm like, man, I don't have it in me anymore. And I just wanted to make sure I could provide a fun time for them, but I didn't think I was able to. And the slam leader that was with us, he came over to me, and he asked me, right off the bat, he asked me why I was there. And I'm like, man, it's a pretty tough question at the beginning of the week here. And I answered him as best I could. I said, I'm here to keep these two out of trouble, and him. Yeah, and that was what I said, to which he responded with, man, you really have an accent on you. And so that was his response. But at Plastic, it's hard to live out, to express yourself and your faith, to these people who don't really understand. But there was a guy who I was hired with. His name is Don. He's an elderly guy, and I noticed something was different about him. He was always happy, and he just seemed different. One day we were talking after work, and he told me that he was a Christian, and I just said, amen, brother. And he told me that he thought the word was what this world needed. And I've talked to him a lot since I've been there. I've kind of confided in him. And on this missions trip, at the end of the week, the question, why are you here, came up again. And I just thought of that we're living out our faith, that I'm living out my faith by being there and just continuing to follow Christ's calling for me. Thank you guys for your support and your prayers.
If you have a Bible with you this morning, you can turn to Psalms chapter 57, or you feel free to follow along on your phone if you'd like. Today is going to be a little bit less expositional in nature. I'm going to highlight a few things from the psalm, and my hope is to bring some application to the students and their families that attended the trip. I think you'll be encouraged by it as well. When Pastor Joel asked me to take a psalm, I was happy to do so, but I remembered that the first seminary class I ever took was in Psalms. And I spent, it was 2 weeks in intensive course in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And I had this great plan that I was going to go there to study while it happened to be in some of the best hunting and fishing land in North America. So I went there, and you had to do some work before the class started. You showed up for the intensive part, and then you had a few weeks to finish up. But I was staying with some friends in the undergraduate portion, and I arrived a day early, and when I got there, my friends were watching Canada play the Czech Republic in the bronze medal game of the Olympics. And they were very, very invested into it. And over the next 2.5 hours, Canada got absolutely dismantled. And I loved every second of it. I mean, they were distraught. And I thought, that's what I look like as a Vikings fan. This is our tradition. I know that look. It was just nice to see it on somebody else for a change. Well, the next morning, I'm having all of this second guessing. Why in the world am I up here? What am I doing? It was, if you think it's cold here, oh my goodness. And it was, I remember getting ready for the day thinking, what am I doing here? Like Rem, I was just glad to graduate high school. I barely got out. I'm thinking, I'm going to go sit with a bunch of smart people and not know what to say. I hope he doesn't ask me anything. So when I got to class, my biggest fears were realized. As I was the youngest by probably 15 years, everyone looked very smart, and the professor was the most intelligent-looking man I've ever seen. He even had one of those, what they call them, little monocle things on a chain that you can... So he has us sit in the circle, and he says, I want everyone to introduce themselves. Share your name, where you're from, and your deepest insight from reading through the Psalms. We had to read through it 5 times, right? And I sit and I listen to scholarly opinion after scholarly opinion after scholarly opinion, and I'm thinking, I've got nothing. I'm in the wrong place here. So I default back to humor. But I remember thinking, I don't know what scholarly people think is funny, but I had nothing. So I said, hi, my name's Joe. I'm from Minnesota, and I would say my deepest insight is that David is the most overly dramatic person I've ever had the pleasure of reading. And nobody laughs, right? Because it's not funny. But the professor, I think, is going to bail me out. He says, well, Joe, thanks for driving all this way, and I speak for all of us Canadians when I say we're glad to have an American here who can wow us with his deep insights. And everybody laughs. And I thought, so scholarly people think it's funny to be a jerk. I get it now. So I thought, well, when in Rome, so I took another stab at it. I said, yeah, that was a pathetic insight. Almost as pathetic as the Canadians' effort in the bronze medal game last night. See, if there was a sound quieter than silence, I found it. It was a long week. It's the worst final grade I've gotten since high school was in Psalms class, and that's not coincidence. So David in the Psalms and I, we have a checkered past. We're just going to see what happens. Last February, we were on a student leaders retreat, and I had the opportunity to meet with each student individually for about 20 minutes, and it was the highlight of my year. And I wasn't prepared for the emotional, like how emotionally taxing it was going to be. But one student meets with me, and all it took was one question. What's going on in your life? How are you doing? And it all just came out. Student talked about their inner struggles. They talked about the way they'd been living that they didn't want to be living anymore. And they said something I'm not going to forget. They said, I want to come back to the Lord, but I don't know how. I was just struck by the honesty and the simplicity of what they were saying. It was so heartfelt. And as I started to try to explain what that looked like, they said, no, I don't know how because I don't feel like I deserve it. You see, the whole point of mercy and grace is that it's undeserved. And in verse 1, David's going to start with that plea, asking for mercy. Some of the students mentioned it. Our first night there, we were asked a question, whose mission are you on? You see, there's only 2 options. You're either on your own mission, looking to find the answers in life yourself, trying to find purpose and perspective on your own, or you're on God's mission, following his Son. See, Psalm 57 is written by a man who's on God's mission. But he writes it from a cave being chased by another man who's on his own mission. And it's been 13 years since David killed Goliath. It's been 13 years since he was anointed the next king of God's people. Saul's been king for 20 years. Saul's the one chasing him. Saul came to power. He won wars with the Philistines and the Ammonites. People began to respect him. He had a military mind. He knew how to use his resources. But from the day that David killed Goliath going forward, things started to go downhill. It's been 14 years now since the giant lay dead in the dirt, and David finds himself on the run for his life, on the mission for God, being chased by a man who's on the mission for himself. He retreats to the mountains, and from the caves, he writes these verses. I'm just going to read the first 7. Have mercy on me, my God, have mercy on me. For in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster is past. I cry out to God Most High, to God who vindicates me. He sends from heaven and saves me, rebuking those who hotly pursue me. God sends forth his love and his faithfulness. I'm in the midst of lions. I'm forced to dwell among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. They spread a net for my feet. I was bowed down in distress. They dug a pit in my path, but they've fallen into it themselves. My heart, O God, is steadfast. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make music. The title says that this is a miktam of David, and that the word has some debate as to what it means, but it really is largely agreed upon that it means something that's hidden or secret. And this makes sense coming from a man who's in hiding, trying to remain secret. But very literally what he's saying is, in secret, I'm going to share a secret that I've found. Something that was hidden to me is now realized. And he takes 11 verses to write about it. And the secret that he comes to paraphrase, is that his confidence is to be rooted in the very character of God. Have mercy on me, my God, have mercy on me. See, David understood that God is rich in mercy. And it's on that basis that he makes his plea. See, David might have been a fugitive hiding in a cave, but he had a king in the Most High. He understood God's supernatural abilities. He understood God's character. He was on God's mission, and he knew that living with God's purposes in mind, he would be okay. Saul, however, had no sensitivity to God. Saul was enamored by his resources, a large military. And he's out to get David, as David is a threat to his throne. And time again, Saul would make the right decisions and chase David and have him pinned down. But there was one thing Saul had no answer for: the providential purposes of God. See, each time he would get David thoughtfully figured out, the Philistines would arrive at the far edge of his properties, at his lands. The Ammonites would attack. He'd have no choice but to pull away from David and focus on them. That did not happen by accident. He says, the shadow of your wings I take refuge. It's a beautiful image. When the shadow of the wings is talked about throughout the Old Testament, oftentimes it refers to the Ark of the Covenant, known for being the presence of God. And whether that's implied here or not, I don't know. But it seems fitting in the sense that here in the cave, in the surroundings of the cave, he's saying, your presence is with me. It's you who protects me. I have confidence in that truth. But while he's confident, he's also concerned. I'm in the midst of lions. I lie among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. He's in trouble. I mean, beautiful imagery, but he talks about being among ravenous beasts, the midst of lions. He talks about tongues, shooting arrows and being spears. It makes you wonder what people are saying about him. Are people lying about him? Are people betraying him? I mean, the tongue can shoot arrows very well. Perhaps he looks at the weapons of those pursuing him, sees them as the teeth of the beast that want to devour something. He says, I'm in the midst of lions. Nobody rests in the midst of lions. So the question I came to in this passage was, how can David stay focused on God when there are life-threatening dangers all around him? I mean, do you remember his secret? His confidence is rooted in the character of God. You see, confidence in God and in his character, who he is, results in a state that most Christians don't seem to find. It's a state that people without God can never find. I think it's my favorite word in the Bible. He writes about it in verse 7, steadfastness. Steadfast. Remarkable mountaintop joys, or being driven down to the depths of depression. Being rooted in the character of God kept him steadfast. My heart, O God, is steadfast. My heart is steadfast. Stated once as truth, a second time for emphasis. Missions team, I want to speak directly to you for a moment. I mean, this trip, we just heard you come up and share about the things that you learned, the impact that happened, the way you were brought face to face with God. I need to be clear on something. I need you to understand this. Your faith is never meant to just be a momentary emotional experience. Your faith cannot just be the summation of your feelings over a short window of time. You're called to steadfastness. You're called to be confident in the very character of God. See, if the totality of one's faith is found in their emotions and not secured in the foundation of God's character, you'll never escape the cave of your hostile surrounding. See, Christians in the modern age have such a propensity to just be driven by their feelings and emotions. People see their lives as just a completion or a togetherness of experiences that have happened to them. That's not true. Your life is much more than that. See, many students stated their intentions to live for God going forward. And while I believe they're well-intentioned, I also believe that if this faith, this decision is just based on emotions alone, it won't last. You have to seek steadfastness. They say that David's a man after God's own heart. You know the old saying, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. See, when your confidence is in the character of God, you start to look like him. You value what he values. You ponder the things that he ponders. Perhaps there's nothing more I admire more about David, overly emotional David, right, than his ability to put into practice the things that he says he believes. I mean, it's a beautiful psalm, but does he live by it? Is this just a mountaintop experience, or does this change his life to the point that this is how he will live for the rest of his days? I need you to fast forward with me as I bring this to a point of conclusion. It's now been 29 years since he killed Goliath. 16 years since he was in the caves. 8 years since he took the throne. David is still on God's mission. He's still living by his secret that he found in the secret place. His confidence is in the character of who God is. And he's reflecting the very characteristics of that God. But David remembers an oath that he's made. He's going to put into practice the secret now. He's going to practice God's character. As though Saul was chasing him, Saul's son Jonathan was his best friend. Fought on David's behalf, tried to intervene. They were so close that David said, when I become king, I won't bring harm to your family. Makes a promise to him. But Saul is dead. Jonathan is dead. Saul's last remaining son that had a right to the throne, Ishbosheth, is now dead. In Saul's fortress, Saul's palace goes into chaos. Because when a king is deposed or a king dies and a new king is coming from a different lineage, the previous family's put to death. It's just customary of that day. So people make a run for it. A nurse goes into a bedroom. She picks up Jonathan's son. He's 5. His name is Mephibosheth. And in the craziness, she drops him. He's crippled in both of his feet. There's no time to get help. There's no time to seek treatment. This is life and death, and they go into hiding. They go to Lodabar, a place meaning nothingness. Farmers couldn't grow crops there. No one would go there. It's a great place to hide. But 8 years after taking the throne, David occurs to him. I'm going to honor that promise that I made. God honors his promises. So he calls an advisor. Is there anyone left from Saul's family? Is there anyone left from the house of Jonathan? And the advisor says, there's one. He's crippled in both of his feet. His name is Mephibosheth. And David says, bring him to me. You know, you think that day that he's carried away, this Mephibosheth, I mean, the story of his life is so sad. His injuries are permanent. I mean, his family, nobody's left. And his childhood, he'd never run and play like other kids. It's not fair. But the most trying thing is he'd live each day thinking there's a king who's hunting him, who wants to kill him over his right to the throne. Sounds familiar. He's brought before David, and you have a beautiful picture. David sees him for the first time, and he actually exclaims, he says, Mephibosheth. I mean, he'd look at the crippled boy and he'd see the likes of his late best friend. I mean, it makes you wonder if they had the same physical features, the same smile, the same mannerisms, the same tone of voice. You know, perhaps upon seeing Mephibosheth, David has not missed his friend Jonathan more than he does now. But he's here to honor his promises. He looks at him and says, don't be afraid. I don't think there's anything more important he could have said than don't be afraid. He says, I'll show kindness to you for the sake of your father. That's forgiveness. I'll give back to you the lands of your grandfather Saul. That's restoration. You'll always eat at my table. It's adoption. Who does this really sound like? Whose mission is David truly on? It sounds an awful lot like a king who's yet to come. One who wears a crown of thorns. One who's nailed to a cross. One who dies for the forgiveness of people, to restore their lives and to adopt them as his own. See, I believe each one of us can see our lives in the person of Mephibosheth, spiritually crippled in sin, trying to make sense of the world around us, feeling as though the circumstances we have are not fair. Each day we know that one day we stand before a king. Let me finish by asking you, whose mission are you on? Perhaps you're here this morning, you're just like the student on the retreat who said, I want to come before the king, but I don't know how. I don't deserve it. You're right, you don't. Nor do I, nor do any of us. That's the whole point. The very essence of grace and mercy is that it's undeserved. But David says something here that shocks me. He says, you'll always eat at my table. You see, I believe people come before the king and ask for forgiveness. I believe people are happy to receive restoration. But I think few go and dine with the king himself on a regular basis. It's required for steadfastness. I mean, the last picture is one of 1000 BC architecture. Huge pillars, tall walls, arched ceilings, a big dining area in a fortress. The king would rightfully sit at the head of the table with his family around him. But at some point, a man on crutches makes his way in. He'd have to have help just to sit. But I have to believe that the first time he sat at that table and looked at the company he was in, he understood what grace and what mercy was all about. David practices the character of God. He's on a mission. He's on God's mission. He's placed full confidence in the Most High. He reflects the very graciousness and mercy to Mephibosheth that God routinely gives to all people. Will you come and eat at the king's table? Whose mission are you on? Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to come, to worship, to share in your word. Lord, what a joy to hear these young people come forward, to talk about the impact that you've made in their lives. Lord, I pray for anyone who's had emotional experiences with you in their life, but it seems to start and stop there. Lord, may we have a heart after you like David had. One that's rooted in the confidence of who you are. One that seeks steadfastness that only you can provide.